In this episode, we are finishing the glossary series by turning domains 3 and 4 of the CompTIA Cybersecurity Analyst, CySA+, exam into a clear spoken language map that helps a beginner hear the terms of incident response, reporting, and communication as parts of one connected workflow. These two domains often feel less technical at first glance than the earlier ones, but that can be misleading because they ask you to understand how organizations move from suspicion to action, from action to recovery, and from recovery to learning and better coordination. A lot of students recognize the words in these domains separately, yet still struggle to understand how the words behave when a real incident is unfolding and several teams need to make decisions at once. What helps is hearing the vocabulary in a more natural way, where each term has a place in the story. By the end of this glossary, the goal is not just to know definitions, but to understand how response terms and communication terms work together so the exam feels less like memorization and more like following a professional process. A strong place to begin is with the terms that describe how security teams classify and understand what they are dealing with. An event is any recorded activity, but by the time you reach domains 3 and 4, the key issue is whether that event has become an incident. An incident is a security matter that threatens confidentiality, integrity, or availability enough that the organization needs coordinated action rather than simple observation. Triage is the process of sorting and prioritizing what deserves attention first, while validation is the act of confirming whether the suspicious signal is supported by enough evidence to trust. Severity describes how serious the issue appears. Urgency reflects how quickly the organization needs to act, and scope refers to how broad the effect may be across systems, users, services, or data. Impact is the real-world consequence to the organization, while confidence refers to how certain the team is that its current understanding is accurate. These terms matter because incident response begins with disciplined interpretation, not with panic, and the exam often asks whether you understand that a team must first know what kind of problem it is facing before it can respond intelligently. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Another key group of words belongs to the overall incident response process itself. Detection is the point where activity is noticed, whether by tools, users, or analysts. Analysis is the effort to understand what happened, how it happened, whether it is still happening, and what it means for the organization. Containment is the act of limiting damage and slowing or stopping the spread of harm without necessarily fixing the root cause right away. Eradication is the process of removing the underlying cause, such as malicious code, compromised accounts, unsafe configurations, or exposed access paths. Recovery is the effort to restore systems, services, and data to trustworthy operation, while lessons learned is the stage where the team studies the incident afterward to improve controls, plans, and response quality. This sequence matters because the exam often tests whether you know what belongs at each point. A good analyst understands that these stages are connected, but not interchangeable, and that doing the right thing at the wrong time can still create a bad result. Containment terms are especially important because they often sound simple until you realize how many decisions they hide. Short-term containment means the quick actions taken to reduce immediate harm, such as isolating a device, disabling an account, or blocking a path of communication. Long-term containment refers to the more stable set of temporary protections that allow the organization to continue operating while a fuller investigation or fix is prepared. Isolation means separating a system or segment so it cannot freely interact with the rest of the environment, while quarantine usually implies restricting an affected item more tightly so it can be observed or controlled. Segmentation, although introduced earlier in the course, becomes crucial here because it limits spread during an incident. Preservation is the decision to keep evidence intact while limiting harm, and that matters because the team must sometimes balance operational pressure against the need to understand what really happened. The best way to hear these words is as tools for regaining control, not as dramatic gestures, because the exam often rewards thoughtful restraint over impulsive action. Eradication and recovery terms form the next part of the response story, and they help explain what it means to move from stabilization toward trustworthy operation again. Remediation is the broader concept of correcting the problem so risk is reduced, while eradication is more specifically focused on removing the malicious or unsafe condition that caused the incident. Reimaging is the act of rebuilding a system from a trusted image so unknown persistence or corruption is less likely to remain, while restoration usually refers to returning files, services, or systems to operation from a known good state. Backup is the preserved copy used to support restoration, and backup integrity matters because a compromised or incomplete backup can deepen recovery problems rather than solve them. Validation after recovery means checking that the system is truly safe and functional, not merely available. Residual risk is the risk that remains after recovery steps are taken, and rollback refers to returning to an earlier state if a change meant to help creates new problems. These terms matter because a system that is online again is not automatically a system that is trustworthy again. Forensic and evidence-related terms are also central in Domain 3, because incident response depends on understanding what traces were left behind and what those traces reveal. Evidence is the recorded or preserved information that helps explain what happened, when it happened, and how it happened. Artifact is the general term for any trace left by activity, such as a file, a registry entry, a process record, a log entry, or network metadata. Chain of custody is the documented record of how evidence was handled, by whom, and when, which matters especially when integrity or legal defensibility is important. Volatile data is information that can disappear quickly, such as memory contents or live process state, while non-volatile data stays stored after power is removed. Memory capture refers to collecting live memory for later analysis, and disk image refers to a preserved copy of storage content. Root cause analysis is the effort to understand the underlying reason the incident was able to happen, and postmortem is the reflective review after the fact. The exam often uses these terms to test whether you understand that preserving and interpreting evidence is part of the response, not a separate side activity. Planning terms also matter because mature incident response begins long before the incident itself. An incident response plan, IRP, is the broader document that defines how the organization prepares for, identifies, escalates, responds to, and learns from incidents. A playbook is a more focused guide for handling a specific type of scenario, such as malware, phishing, insider misuse, or suspicious outbound traffic. A runbook is a more operational set of instructions for carrying out tasks in an orderly way, often more detailed and process-driven than a broader playbook. Roles and responsibilities describe who is expected to do what, while escalation path describes how an issue moves upward or outward when more authority, skill, or awareness is needed. Decision authority refers to who is empowered to approve major actions such as service shutdown, law enforcement contact, or external communication. Tabletop exercise is a structured discussion that walks people through a scenario to test readiness, while simulation is a more active practice event. These terms matter because the exam expects you to understand that preparation reduces confusion, and confusion during an incident can become its own form of risk. Business continuity language becomes important because incidents do not occur in a vacuum. Business continuity, BC, is the broader discipline concerned with keeping essential functions operating during disruption, while disaster recovery, DR, focuses more specifically on restoring systems, services, and technology after serious interruption. Recovery time objective, RTO, is the target amount of time allowed to restore a service or function, while recovery point objective, RPO, is the acceptable amount of data loss measured in time. A critical function is an activity the organization depends on heavily, and dependency mapping helps show which systems, teams, or services support that function. Failover is the movement to a backup or alternate system when the primary one is unavailable, while redundancy is the presence of duplicated capability meant to improve resilience. These terms matter in CySA+ because an analyst is not only watching for malicious activity. An analyst is helping the organization preserve operations under pressure, and that means understanding that security response and service continuity often have to be balanced carefully. Communication and notification terms form a large part of Domain 4, and they often determine whether the organization acts coherently or chaotically once a problem becomes serious. Escalation means moving an issue to someone with greater authority, broader visibility, or stronger technical skill. Notification is the act of informing the appropriate people that something has happened or may soon require action. Declaration refers to the formal recognition that a situation has reached the level of an incident or crisis under the organization's process. Stakeholder is any person or group with a meaningful interest in the outcome, such as leadership, operations teams, legal staff, business owners, customers, or technical responders. Audience awareness means shaping the message for the people who need to hear it, while communication channel refers to how that message is delivered, such as email, ticketing system, secure messaging, or direct briefing. Timeliness means the information arrives when it can still shape the outcome, and accuracy means the information reflects the truth as carefully as current evidence allows. These terms matter because even strong technical response can fail if the right people never understand what is happening or what action they are expected to take. Reporting vocabulary is another core part of Domain 4 because security work becomes useful to the organization only when findings are expressed in ways others can act on. An incident report is the documented summary of what happened, what was affected, what was done, and what remains to be done. An executive summary is the shorter high-level explanation meant for leaders who need risk, impact, and decision support rather than deep technical detail. A findings report presents the evidence and conclusions gathered through analysis, while an action plan explains what corrective or preventive steps are recommended next. Remediation status tracks whether fixes or improvements are planned, in progress, delayed, verified, or complete. Exception report identifies where expected controls or fixes are not in place and why. Inhibitor is a condition slowing or preventing remediation, such as budget limits, staffing gaps, maintenance windows, vendor dependence, or system fragility. These terms matter because the exam often wants you to choose not only what the team should know, but what different stakeholders should be told and how that information should be framed. Metrics and measurement terms are also important, but beginners need to hear them in a practical way rather than as abstract management language. A metric is a measurable data point used to track activity, performance, or exposure over time. A key performance indicator, KPI, is a metric used to judge how effectively a process or team is functioning, while a key risk indicator, KRI, points toward levels of exposure or conditions that suggest growing danger. A key control indicator, KCI, reflects whether a security control is operating as expected, which helps the organization understand whether defenses are healthy or weakening. Trend analysis is the comparison of these measures over time to see whether things are improving, deteriorating, or staying flat. Mean time to detect, MTTD, measures how long it takes to identify a real issue, while mean time to respond, MTTR, measures how quickly the team acts once the issue is known. These terms matter because good reporting is not just storytelling. It also uses carefully chosen measurements to show whether the organization is becoming more resilient or quietly more vulnerable. Another cluster of Domain 4 terms relates to the quality of communication itself. Clarity means the message is understandable without forcing the audience to decode unnecessary jargon. Conciseness means the message is short enough to remain usable without losing important truth. Relevance means the content connects directly to the audience's role, concern, or decision. Transparency means being honest about what is known, what is not yet known, and what assumptions are still being tested. Consistency means different reports and briefings do not contradict one another in ways that create avoidable confusion. Audience-appropriate language means the same facts may need to be expressed differently for analysts, managers, legal teams, or executives. Call to action means the message includes what needs to happen next, while status update means the message keeps people informed as conditions change. These terms matter because strong communication is not a decorative skill. It is part of operational control, and the exam often rewards answers that turn technical knowledge into clear, timely, and useful direction. Uncertainty-related terms are worth understanding because real incidents often unfold with incomplete information, and how a team communicates under uncertainty strongly affects credibility. Preliminary finding means the current conclusion is still early and may change as more evidence arrives. Confirmed finding means the team has enough evidence to stand behind the conclusion with higher confidence. Working theory is the explanation currently guiding the investigation, even though it has not yet been fully proven. Confidence level is the degree of certainty attached to a statement or conclusion, and assumption is something being treated as likely true for the moment, even though verification is still pending. Caveat is the caution or condition attached to information so the audience understands its limitations. Unknown scope means the organization does not yet know the full spread or effect of the problem. These terms matter because CySA plus expects mature communication. Mature communication does not pretend to know everything too early, but it also does not hide behind vagueness. It explains the present picture honestly enough that others can still make sound decisions while the investigation continues. Ownership and governance terms also appear frequently in these domains because incidents and reporting both require clear accountability. An incident owner is the person or team responsible for guiding the response process, while a system owner is accountable for the affected asset or service. A data owner has responsibility tied to the information affected, and a control owner is responsible for a specific safeguard or defensive mechanism that may have failed, succeeded, or needed improvement. Governance is the larger framework through which the organization sets direction, oversight, and accountability for security decisions. Compliance refers to meeting legal, regulatory, contractual, or policy requirements, which often shapes reporting obligations and timelines. Legal hold may apply when evidence or records must be preserved because of possible legal action or formal investigation. Approval authority refers to the role empowered to authorize important response actions or messaging. These terms matter because an incident becomes harder to manage when everyone is informed, but no one clearly owns the next move. And the exam often tests whether you understand that security response is as much about defined responsibility as it is about technical action. The final group of glossary terms worth hearing clearly involves improvement after the incident, because mature organizations do not treat restoration as the end of the story. Lessons learned is the structured review of what went well, what went poorly, and what should change. Gap analysis is the comparison between expected capability and actual performance, which helps identify where controls, plans, staffing, or communication fell short. Corrective action is the step taken to fix a discovered weakness, while preventive action is the step taken to reduce the chance of recurrence. Process improvement means refining workflows, documentation, escalation paths, or training so future response is stronger. Training update means educating people based on what the incident revealed, while playbook refinement means changing response guidance to match reality more closely. Continuous improvement is the broader idea that response capability should evolve over time instead of staying static. These terms matter because CySA Plus is teaching you that incidents are not only problems to survive. They are also opportunities to make the environment, the process, and the people better prepared for the next challenge. By the end of this glossary, the biggest thing to carry forward is that domains 3 and 4 are really the language of movement, coordination, and meaning. Incidents are detected, analyzed, contained, eradicated, and recovered from. But that technical sequence only becomes fully effective when evidence is preserved, responsibilities are clear, communication is timely, reports are useful, metrics are meaningful, and improvement follows afterward. The best learners are not simply the ones who can define containment, escalation, KPI, or chain of custody on demand. They are the ones who understand where those terms live in the larger story of response and why each one matters at the moment it appears. Once you hear the vocabulary that way, these two domains stop sounding like a final pile of new words and start sounding like the natural conclusion to the whole CySA Plus framework. The certification has been building toward this point all along, where analysis, action, reporting, and learning all come together into one professional way of thinking.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.